All right, hello everybody. Thought I would thought I would continue on with our conversation today about thinking and thinking too much, and have you guys respond to me in some capacity on Monday because I won't be here. So let's continue with this conversation a little bit. So to recap, I usually like to finish the semester this way because as English teachers, and we try to force you to think and think deeply and peel back the layers on things. And generally speaking, that's a good idea. But there's a diminishing return, and I want to discuss that a little bit because I do feel very strongly that if I were to have created in you a habit of overthinking, that's a problem. I want to be able to at least point out some indications of whether or not that's happening and maybe give you some insights. Now, this is largely Mr. Hart's opinion. I want to be clear with that up front. So just take this as another thing, another opinion, or another perspective that you can take or not, or believe or not. But it is riddled with a lot of opinions. Okay. Now, first up, there's an idea of ignorance is bliss that came up second hour directly, and it came up indirectly in first hour. And that concept is very deep and very profound. And I want to say that I believe I made a mistake in believing that for many, 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 many years. And I think that it stunted my development. So here's how it basically works. We know that ignorant people, whether by choice or by no choice of their own, are ignorant. Ignorance exists in the population in various um, concentrations, and there is a lot of happiness in that concentrated populace, and it seems kind of irrefutable. It seems to be what's called axiomatic or a given that the less intellect you have, the happier you are. And so that misled me for quite a while. And what I came to realize as more of an adult, and I think I'm closer to the truth now, and that is ignorance is only bliss if you have someone in your matrix, in your someone in your direct purview. What's the word here? In your proximity. Ignorance is only bliss if someone in your proximity is not ignorant. I'll give you an example. Take a child. The child is ignorant and they are happy. My son wakes up when he wakes up in the morning. The first thing he does sometimes is just break out into an applause. He loves life, and it's so awesome to see that. Well, he's ignorant and he's in bliss, but he can only be that way because I'm there protecting him. So wherever you find someone who's ignorant and happy, right next to them, very near, someone loves them and has their eyes open to the world and all of its potential pitfalls and ugliness. So I create in Eddie a little bit of a Garden of Eden. So I'm curating a Garden of Eden for him, and I'm not special. You, to the extent of which you have your eyes open and swallow what Mr. Williams called medicine in second hour, to the extent that you have your eyes open and are staring at the ugly sides of life, you can then protect the people in your area from either A, knowing about them or stumbling into them. So you can create a Garden of Eden for your loved ones if that's the life that you choose. So to say that ignorance is bliss does not mean that intelligence equals sadness. It's a different statement, in my opinion. Um, Choosing to keep your eyes open and to stare at problems so that you don't fall into them or the people you love don't fall into them. It's not necessarily a happy life, but I would say that's a very fulfilling one. I get a large satisfaction from protecting my loved ones by doing combat with the ugliness of life so that my loved ones don't necessarily have to do that if they don't want to. There are, yeah, let's just leave it at that. So it depends on what you want out of life. If you want happiness, then find someone who will do battles for you in your place. And that's not a subservient life necessarily. That's not necessarily a lesser life because we need to create pockets of innocence so that innocence and beauty and effervescence can manifest themselves or grow like flowers, right? Um, So anyway, that's not a that changed my mind about what ignorance and knowledge was when I came to that realization. I brought this up last week, but when it comes to taking your medicine or to learning things about life that may or may not be disturbing, we have metaphors of Santiago going off into the ocean by himself and losing the glow of Havana, which represents the people and being alone, grasping the biggest ideas that have ever been seen, but that you're alone and vulnerable and in a dangerous, precarious situation because you have no one to help you when you do that. Or Holden Caulfield, who is figuratively leaving the glow of Havana. Or we have William Golding talking about grade 1 and grade 2 thinkers and grade 3 thinkers. And we have a winnowing effect that the more grade 2 and grade 1 you get, the more isolated you can be. And there's strengths and weaknesses with that. We've talked about all that in the past. The metaphor I have for you is this. It's very common sense, and it's not actually controversial whatsoever to say that running is good, but if you run a lot, you're going to damage your knees, right? Or you're going to damage your liver, or you're going to damage things. Like you ultra marathoners sacrifice the health of their body in order to do that. That's not controversial, and it makes sense. And if you run too much, if you get yourself into a running habit, you can be really healthy. But if you run too much, sometimes you're going to damage your body, and you're going to get shin splints or ankle problems or whatnot, and you're going to have to stop. Maybe for a day, maybe for a month, maybe for a year in order to recuperate. So that's like I said, not controversial. When it comes to thinking, when it comes to, like I said, opening your eyes to the world around you and staring at the problems so that you can do combat with the problems to help society with those battles if you can handle it, or if anything, just to know where the pits and bombs are so that you can corral people away from those problems so that you can be the catcher in the rye. The more you study about life, the more exhausted you can get. No human being can hold all of life's problems at once without being crushed by it. Okay, so what I'd like to is my goal, and I don't think I'm necessarily successful at it at all times. But my goal is to open my eyes and to learn about the problems and be the catcher in the rye. But sometimes I get exhausted. Sometimes it wears me out. I know you guys are old enough to have learned an idea at some point since you've been 12 years old, or maybe even earlier. I know we've all been at a point where we've learned something that was so, whether it was horrendous or heinous or evil or ugly or gross or incomprehensible, we've all learned an idea or been exposed to an idea so profound and large that it exhausted us for days and days or maybe even weeks. There might have been a time where you learned something you didn't want to know and it really rattled you and it wore you out and you were done for 2 weeks. Done. Like even you just were dragging for a while when you learned about this, okay? Maybe it's not even like something on the internet you stumbled across. Maybe your parents divorced or something like that. And all of a sudden, like the concept that love can break was such an enormous learning lesson that you took a year to recover. Maybe you'll never recover. There's some ideas that you will never be the same. You'll always have that knee problem, that aching knee problem. You have to ice your knee every time you run for the rest of your life. My point is that there are problems with knowledge, but I don't think that means that knowledge equals bad. If I say this is my advice. If you want to do combat with life, do it. Open your eyes, learn what needs to be learned. But if you ever find yourself getting exhausted or worn out or depressed or anxious, just stop. Take 2 weeks off and come back and do it again.